Hey, squirrels. This hat I made makes me think of that, what was it? Wally, was it Wally? Go find Wally book. Waldo. Waldo. I love the colors, but it's just whatever. It's my crazy hat. Okay, back to chapter 8, and we're going to do part 2. I'm going to go back just a little bit. Catherine had kept up her acquaintance with the Lintons since her 5 weeks' residence among them, and as she had no temptation to show her rough side in their company, and had the sense to be ashamed of being rude where she experienced such invariable courtesy, she imposed unwittingly on the old lady and gentleman by her ingenious cordiality, gained the admiration of Isabella and the heart and soul of her brother. Acquisitions that flattered her from the first, for she was full of ambition, and led her to adopt a double character without exactly intending to deceive anyone. In the place where she heard Heathcliff termed a vulgar young ruffian and worse than a brute, she took care not to act like him, but at home she had small inclination to practice politeness that would only be laughed at, and restrain an unruly nature when it would bring her neither credit nor praise. Mr. Edgar seldom mustered courage to visit Wuthering Heights openly. He had a terror of Earnshaw's reputation and shrunk from encountering him, and yet he always received with our best attempts at civility. The master himself avoided offending him, knowing why he came, and if he could not be gracious, kept out of the way. I rather think his appearance there was distasteful to Catherine. She was not artful, never played the coquette, and had evidently an objection to her two friends meeting at all. For when Heathcliff expressed contempt of Linton in his presence, she could not half coincide as she did in his absence. And when Linton evinced disgust and antipathy to Heathcliff, she dared not treat his sentiments with indifference, as if depreciation of her playmate were of scarcely any consequence to her. I've had many a laugh at her perplexities and untold troubles which she vainly strove to hide from my mockery. That sounds ill-natured, but she was so proud it became really impossible to pity her distresses, till she should be chastened into more humility. She did bring herself finally to confess and to confide in me. There was not a soul else that she might fashion into an adviser. Mr. Henley had gone from home one afternoon, and Heathcliff presumed to give himself a holiday on the strength of it. He had reached the age of 16 then, I think, and without having bad features or being deficient in intellect, he contrived to convey an impresence of inward and outer repulsiveness that his present aspect retains no traces of. In the first place, he had by that time lost the benefit of his early education. Continual hard work, begun soon and concluded late, had extinguished any curiosity he once possessed in pursuit of knowledge and any love for books or learning. His childhood sense of superiority, instilled into him by the favors of old Mr. Earnshaw, was faded away. He struggled long to keep up an equality with Catherine in her studies, and yielded with poignant though silent regret, but he yielded completely, and there was no prevailing on him to take a step in the way of moving upward. When he found he must necessarily sink beneath his former level, then personal appearance sympathized with mental deterioration. He acquired a slouching gait, an ignoble look, His natural reserved disposition was exaggerated into an almost idiotic excess of unsociable moroseness, and he took a grim pleasure apparently in exciting the aversion rather than the esteem of his few acquaintance. Catherine and he were constant companions still at his seasons of respite from labor, but he had ceased to express his fondness for her in words, and recoiled with angry suspicion from her girlish caresses, as if conscious there could be no gratification on lavishing such marks of affection on him. On the before named occasion he came into the house to announce his intention of doing nothing, while I was assisting Miss Kathy to arrange her dress. She had not reckoned on his taking it into his head to be idle, and imagining she would have the whole place to herself, she managed, by some means, to inform Mr. Edgar of her brother's absence, and then preparing to receive him. "Kathy, are you busy this afternoon?" asked Heathcliff. "Are you going anywhere?" "No, it is raining," she answered. "Why have you that silk frock on, then?" he said. "Nobody coming here, I hope." "Not that I know of," stammered Miss, "but you should be in the field now, Heathcliff. It's an hour past dinner time. I thought you were gone." "Henley does not often free us from his accursed presence," observed the boy. "I'll not work any more today. I'll stay with you." "Oh, but Joseph will tell," she suggested. "You'd better go." "Joseph is loading lime on the further side of Penistone Crags. It will take him till dark, and he'll never know." So saying, he lounged to the fire and sat down. Catherine reflected an instant. With knitted brows, she found it needful to smooth the way for an intrusion. "Isabella and Edgar Linton talked of calling this afternoon," she said, at the conclusion of a minute's silence. "As it rains, I hardly expect them, but they may come, and if they do, you run the risk of being scolded for no good." "Order Ellen to say you are engaged, Kathy," he persisted. "Don't turn me out for those pitiful, silly friends of yours. I'm on the point sometimes of complaining but I'll not." They what?" cried Catherine, gazing at him with a troubled countenance. "Oh, Nellie," she added petulantly, jerking her head away from my hands. "You've combed my hair quite out of curl. That's enough. Let me alone. What are you on the point of complaining about, Heathcliff?" "Nothing. Only look at the almanac on that wall." He pointed to a framed sheet hanging near the window and continued, "The crosses are for the evenings you have spent with Linton's. The dots for those spent with me. Do you see? I've marked every day." "Yes, very foolish if I took notice," replied Catherine, in a peevish tone. "And where's the sense of that?" "To show that I do take notice," said Heathcliff. "And should I always be sitting with you?" she demanded, growing more irritated. "What good do I get? What do you talk about? You might be dumb, or a baby, or anything you say to amuse me, or for anything you do either." "You never told me that before I talked too little, or that you disliked my company, Kathy," exclaimed Heathcliff in much agitation. "It's no company at all when people know nothing and say nothing," she muttered. Her companion rose up, but he hadn't time to express his feelings further, for a horse's feet were heard on the flags, and having knocked gently, young Linton entered, his face brilliant with delight at the unexpected summons she received. Doubtless Catherine marked the difference between her friends as one came in and the other went out. The contrast resembled what you will see in exchanging a bleak, hilly, cold country for a beautiful, fertile valley, and his voice and greeting were as opposite as his aspect. He had a sweet, low manner of speaking, and pronounced his words as you do, that's less gruff than we talk here, and softer. "I'm not come too soon, am I?" he said, casting a look at me. I had begun to wipe the plate and tidy some drawers at the far end of the dresser. No, answered Catherine. What are you doing there, Nellie? My work, miss, I replied. Mr. Henley had given me directions to make a third party in any private visits Linton chose to pay. She stepped behind me and whispered crossly, Take yourself and your dusters off. When company are in the house, servants don't commence scouring and cleaning in the room where they are. It's a good opportunity now that master is away, I answered aloud. He hates me to be fidgeting over these things in his presence. I'm sure Mr. Edgar will excuse me. I hate you to be fidgeting in my presence, exclaimed the young lady imperiously. Not allowing her guest time to speak, she had failed to recover her equanimity since the little dispute with Heathcliff. I'm sorry for it, Miss Catherine, was my response, and I proceeded assiduously with my occupation. She, supposing Edgar could not see her, snatched the cloth from my hand and pinched me with a prolonged wrench very spitefully on the arm. I've said I did not love her and rather relished mortifying her vanity now and then. Besides, she hurt me so extremely, I started up from my knees and screamed out, Oh, miss, that's a nasty trick. You have no right to nip me. I'm not going to bear it. Sorry. Dry mouth. I didn't touch you, you lying creature, cried she, her fingers tingling to repeat the act and her ears red with rage. She never had power to conceal her passion. It always set her whole complexion in a blaze. What's that, then? I retorted, showing a decided purple witness to refute her. She stamped her foot, wavered a moment, and then, irresistibly impelled by the naughty spirit within her, slapped me on the cheek, a stinging blow that filled both eyes with water. Catherine, love, Catherine, interposed Linton, greatly shocked at the double fault of falsehood and violence which his idol had committed. Leave the room, Ellen, she repeated, trembling all over. Little Hareton, who followed me everywhere and who was sitting near me on the floor, seeing my tears, commenced crying himself and sobbed out complaints against wicked Aunt Cathy, which drew her fury onto his unlucky head. She seized his shoulders, shook him till the poor child waxed livid, and Edgar thoughtlessly laid hold of her hands to deliver him. In an instant one was wrung free, and the astonished young man felt it applied over his own ear in a way that could not be mistaken for jest. He drew back in consternation. I lifted Hareton in my arms and walked off to the kitchen with him, leaving the door of communication open, for I was curious to watch how they would settle their agreement. The insulted visitor moved to the spot where he had laid his hat, pale and with a quivering lip. That's right, I said to myself. Take warning and be gone. It's a kindness to let you have a glimpse of her genuine disposition. Where are you going? Demanded Catherine, advancing to the door. He swerved aside and attempted to pass. You must not go, she exclaimed energetically. I must and shall, he replied in a subdued voice. No, she persisted, grasping the handle. Not yet, Edgar Linton. Sit down. You shall not take leave me in that temper. I should be miserable all night, and I won't be miserable for you. Can I stay after you have struck me? Asked Linton. Catherine was mute. You've made me afraid and ashamed of you, he continued. I'll not come here again. Her eyes began to glisten and her lids to twinkle. And you told me a deliberate untruth, he said. I didn't, she cried, recovering her speech. I did nothing deliberately. Well, go if you please. Get away. And now I'll cry myself sick. She dropped down on her knees by a chair and set to weeping in serious earnest. Edgar persevered in his resolution as far as the court. There he lingered. I resolved to encourage him. Mrs. Dreadfully Wayward, sir, I called out, as bad as any marred child. You better be riding home, or else she'll be sick only to grieve us. The soft thing looked askance through the window. He possessed the power to depart as much as a cat possesses the power to leave a mouse half killed or a bird half eaten. I thought there will be no saving him. He's doomed, and flies to his fate. And so it was. He turned abruptly, hastened into the house again, shut the door behind him, and when I went in a while after to inform them that Earnshaw had come home, rabid drunk, ready to pull the whole place about our ears, his ordinary frame of mind in that condition, I saw the quarrel had merely effected a closer intimacy, had broken the outworks of youthful timidity, and enabled them to forsake the disguise of friendship and confess themselves lovers. Intelligence of Mr. Henley's arrival drove Linton speedily to his horse, and Catherine to her chamber. I went to hide the Hareton and to take the shot out of the master's fowling piece, which he was fond of playing with in his insane excitement, to the hazard of the lives of any who provoked or even attracted his notice too much. And I had hit upon the plan of removing it that he might do less mischief if he did go to the length of firing the gun. And that's it for chapter 8. Phew! A little bit of action there at least. I think that's all of Wuthering Heights I can take for the day. I should try to catch up with Anne, but two very different books. But that was getting better. It's getting better, I think. Okay, I'll be on live today at 3 right here because unless the sun comes out, it's not looking good for outside today. It's a little chilly and cloudy. So we'll see you later and we'll see what hat I have on next. Bye. Love you. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Bye-bye.